You're listening to My Inner Teacher with Peter Starius and Crystal Ariel. The answers you seek are within you.
Welcome, Taane. It's a pleasure to meet finally after these attempts to get us together.
Yeah.
And we're together today because of this suggestion from Damien down at Aroha about what the work you're doing. And we've done our research, but I'm curious, tell us in a way to introduce yourself what you're doing right now with your work through either dance or through yoga or for both.
Kia ora, ko Taane Mete a hau no ngā te kahungunu me ngā te kore ki ka kura ngā hapu, ko kahura ana ki ko manga tautaringa manga, ko haungarea ko te manawa nui ngā pā, ko waikato ko ngaru roro ngā awa, ko tupara parekoro toku pāpā, ko anikara toku māma, ko Taane Mete a hau, kia ora. Thank you for the introduction and for being here. It's very exciting indeed. Here in Aotearoa, Auckland, New Zealand. My work derives from cultural aspects and grounding heritage of my culture, Māori culture. And Damon is a dear friend, and I guess one thing that I respect about his work is that he really connects to leaders or facilitators in the industry of hauora wellness and considers the work that they do. So grateful to Damien. And movement has always been a part of my embodied practice since I was a child, but I even believe that that comes from my heritage, from my whakapapa of my grandparents, ancestors of this land, Aotearoa.
Yeah. Did this heritage that multi-generational heritage that you've carried, the movement piece of it, I'm a New Zealand citizen. I don't know if you knew that. I consider New Zealand my second home. And we had moved during the pandemic. We were living in Nelson. And the intention of us being there was to make New Zealand a permanent home. And things changed during the pandemic, and we ended up coming back to the States. But there's a quality of life that I've experienced in New Zealand from the very first time I went. And this story is one that I've told publicly, but I went to New Zealand to play rugby, which is ironic, but it gave me access to so many things that intuitively I felt called to be there for, including meeting a master yoga teacher who ended up being someone I've studied with for 20 years, who lived in Australia. And what my experience in New Zealand was witnessing, in a way, the same challenges of a multicultural society, but in a small community where everyone kind of knows everyone. You know, there's that 5 degrees of separation in New Zealand that is so powerful. And even the first time that I was living there, I was meeting some very well-respected, important people in New Zealand culture, both Māori and Western culture, that would not have happened in the United States as easily. And my personal love of movement has allowed me access to meet people like yourself. And that's something that is really a gift. I feel a blessing of having a relationship in New Zealand. And I'm still curious to know that as a child, this cultural education, this cultural ceremony, was it so powerfully integrated from your whole life? Or did you have the typical kind of thing that happens a lot in the United States of this teenage year rebellion of anything that is kind of the ancestry demands to kind of, the reason we have this Inner Teacher Academy is that it's about people who have moved away from this external authority of school or even culture or whatever to find their own path. I'm curious, with this strong lineage of culture, is it similar to you? Is there an encouragement in your culture to go to the dark night of the soul by yourself, or go to these places of shadow by yourself? Is it inherent in your culture?
Before you go deep into that, I just want to ask you, when you introduced yourself, were you introducing your lineage?
That's right. My ancestors are those who, on both my mother and my father's side, acknowledging both pathways, and right to the present day of who I am. So I introduced myself last from the lineage of my past into present.
How far back do you go?
Whakapapa really connects to the lineage of the tribe that I am from and the boats, and it acknowledges the waka, the boats that arrived here in Aotearoa, but it also acknowledges even beyond that point to those who made the voyage, my ancestors who made the voyage, but acknowledging their ancestors beyond. So it's an interesting pathway, because I feel like both of your questions actually relate to past, present, future. And from the question that you asked, Peter, in my upbringing, I guess my introduction to kapahaka, cultural practice of song, dance, and togetherness really was, now that I reflect, even when I looked over the questions this morning, it was simply that it was about connection. And it was a way that I could be closer to my family members, to my friends who also did kapahaka as well. And we celebrated us being together through the song, the voice, the movement, and just really participation and just being present with cultural aspects. But it was more about, for me, as I remember back, just being with all my friends and my cousins and my family that initiated what became, a pivotal point in my life. And the next stage, I guess, of connecting with my relatives and singing the next stage was performing. And so when I was in primary school, probably about 9 or 10, there's an opportunity there to perform all the area, the schools in the area where I'm from. We get to participate in a school kapahaka festival where all the schools come together from the region to perform on stage. And that was one of the most pivotal points in my life, where I got to witness this energetic vibration of representation of culture of who I am through the song and the voice. And it really had a really pivotal point on connecting body, mind, soul, spirit. And I think that was the first initiation of myself to connection.
What age was that?
That was about 9, 10, but honestly, that was the performing stage. But honestly, we were brought up singing Māori songs. So I would say that really was around about the 4, 5, 6 stage. So it was really just integrated into life. But the performance was around about the 9, 10 period of my life.
So I'm curious how that navigates the teenage years. And maybe I'm a little fixated on that at the moment, because I've just gone through, my daughter now is 18 years old. And so I've gone through this transition from adolescence to the end of the teenage years. And it wasn't easy. There was challenges every step. And where my curiosity here is culturally, in Maori culture, do they have a recognition of that teenage phase? Is there something different that happens as, in Jungian psychology, that age is more like intentionally breaking from tribe, intentionally breaking family bonds to self-discovery. Is that part of Maori tradition, Maori ritual, to take the adolescent teenagers out into the wild and kind of initiate into adulthood?
Really interesting question, because I grew up in a small town, Napier, and so I didn't grow up alongside my rural family, my cousins and aunts and uncles who lived in the countryside. I think they were more closer to the marae connection, which is the whare that anchors to your whakapapa. I grew up in the city, so I was schooled in the Western way. I was, living a lifestyle of the time of the 60s, 70s. And I guess that it was less influential to connect back to whakapapa o marae. There were stages where I could, through family and being with them, we would go and visit marae, but it wasn't in community surrounded by us constantly, like my relatives. And I guess but what kind of underpins everything is still anchored to who we are as a nation, a people, a culture, Māori, authentically, that is innately within me always. How I identified with it, really, it came and it went in so many ways. It left me, it came back to me. And I feel that now, and, when I reflect, growing up, initially, it was close to us. It was tangible. but it wasn't always something that we touched on continuously. When it came to the teenage, I think that's more about self-discovery. Who am I? And where do I fit into the world in which I've been, in lots of ways when I look back, an only avenue to learn and discover from. And really my discovery was from friends and learning how I kind of situate myself in the world. But the most deeper root was really, who am I as a human? And one thing that I come back to in all of my years, and I spoke about this last week in a performance that I just finished. I just created a brand new work called Hikoi, which means to march. And at the end, I spoke a little bit about the daydreaming, and that was something that I definitely was. In school, I daydreamed a lot, and I always wished that I was outside. I always wished that I was in nature. I always wished that I could move, dance, sort of, and I wouldn't say on stage or anything, but just to be physical with myself, climb and, a normal child intuition to climb a tree, that was my desire, to be out in nature, climb. And then as I grew up, I realized that in those teenage years, I was always continually daydreaming, and I think it stayed with me all the way. I daydream now. But that daydreaming really came to fruition of my creative self as I started to imagine what it was like to dance, what it was like to move in a really beautiful way. The program Fame, I don't know if you remember the program Fame.
Yeah, of course.
Leroy and his leg warmers. Well, so a stage, I guess, would be growing up as a child into intermediate stage, like 11, 12, 13. The program Fame came out. So that initiation to see this embodied movement in the body and dance, like I've always heard of dance, but not in the way that the program illustrated, And I immediately became hooked to the program. And I remember writing in a friend's friendship book where you write, what's your favorite color? What's your address? Auntie, mother. And it said, what was your career? And I literally put down dancing, but I've never ever done an official dance class before. And then it came into high school, and I had never really, and the daydreaming kept happening. I was in geography looking out the window. Where is my life going? Who am I? What do I want to do? Move. I always had this intuitiveness to move. I was always very physical. I loved to run, play, and play was my big open mass thing that really cultured the way that I live my life is through play, and that hasn't changed either. And so from that high school era stage, when I was probably about 15, friends of mine at school and high school said, what are you doing now? We're going into the city and we're going to go to a dance class. Do you want to come with us? And I went, well, sure, I'll come along and watch you all. So we walked into town, laughing along the way. I watched them do dance class. And as I was watching, I was thinking, you should be going to the left. You're going to the right. Go left. Step on your right foot to go left. And then the teacher noticed in the dance class, a jazz class, she said, looked like you were paying an interest in what they were doing. Why don't you try and come to class next week? It will be on us. Come and try the dance class. I've never looked back. That first dance class really initiated my dance career.
And that was jazz?
That was jazz.
Is that how you started?
Yeah, it was. With a beautiful teacher, Shirley Jarrett. And she invited me back for, I think it was 2 classes that I could have for free. And then it was sort of looking at what I wanted to do with it. But I immediately fell in love in the first class. I didn't have any of the gears that I'm supposed to, but I just turned up in my school uniform, ready to go. And that was the first steps into the dance career.
What other kind of dance are you trained in? Or did you formally train
So
in?
from that point, it was time for me to leave school. I left really early, still in this daydream state. And school, I knew really wasn't for me. And so my high school teacher rang my mother and said, we think that Taane should leave. He's not doing very well in school. He's hardly ever there. And then, so I left, and there was a scheme called the PEP scheme when you're in high school, if you're transitioning from school to work, and the government would pay you a little bit of money to sort of assist that journey. So for 1 week, I was a part of the scheme, doing different things. One day you'd be in the forest picking up things, and then you'd be making baby clothes the next day. So it kind of changed a little. And then 1 week after doing that, there was a phone call that said, well, look, you wrote on your brief that you'd like to do dance because I was going to dance class and there's an audition that's next Friday. Would you be interested? It's a dance company in Napier. And I thought, oh, okay, cool. This would be really, really amazing. And what a great opportunity. And I went to the audition. I was there literally 15 minutes and she said, you've got the job. And all I had to do was point my toes, get into the splits, do a back bend, and I had the job. And that was another initiation towards my career. I then, from that point, stayed in that company for 8 months and I auditioned for the New Zealand School of Dance and I got in. I didn't get in because of my attributes as a dancer. I was a wild card, so I wasn't in the school, but I wasn't out of the school. I was kind of on the fine line of potentially this could go any way. He could be kicked out in 6 months or he can stay. I graduated with honours after three years at the school. And honestly, once I started the school, straight A student, my maths just increased. I could calculate numbers very quickly because it's all about timing and musicality and being at the right place at the right time on the count. So all of these combinations were the initiation to my life. Yeah.
And in that moment, these moments that you're describing, did you feel lucky? Did you feel like this was happening because of luck, or was it happening because of destiny? Did you have a sense at that young age that you were being guided, you were following some calling?
It's interesting you say that because, yeah, I believe so now that there was a divine intervention through my life. And now that I'm at the age I am now and live the life that I have, I see a beautiful healer who connects me with my ancestors and has aligned me with two figures in my ancestry that support me in life. And so I connect with them quite a bit in terms of spirituality, my cultural spirituality. And I think that they are two pivotal guides in my life that help to open the channel if they align and when they align. So yeah, I believe now that I am at the age of, and I look back, yes, I believe that I was guided, but there's always, with that guidance, there's always an obstacle somewhere, and it's how one navigates that obstacle to get over, under, through, in order to make the destiny pathway. So I feel like I am guided through my life. Very interesting, when I was probably about 13, 14, I went to visit my brother who worked in the South Island in Aotearoa. And so I went to visit him and he had some friends over and someone asked me, and that was even a little bit before dance, or maybe they were on the cusp. Maybe there was a little bit of dance, like 6 months worth of training at the school in Napier with the teacher Shirley Jarrett. But I went down to visit my brother. Actually, sorry, this is pre-dance. This is a little bit earlier. So I was about 13. Where these friends asked me what I wanted to do. Do I have some form of practice? And I remember saying to them that I would love to do yoga, that I'd never done yoga. Why I said that, I'm not sure. I think I wasn't able to tell from experience because I had never done yoga before, but when I saw it, it looked like a very peaceful state, but also a very meditative, connective space when you move slowly in and out of stillness. So that was something that was quite interesting that I reflect back on that at that age, and somehow those correlations or those pathways have connected.
Yeah.
And you mentioned obstacles. What obstacles did you have?
I guess it's, life, passing away of family members. I lost my father at an early age. I was 15, and it was at the time of school exams and things, and it was 14 actually, and I felt derailed in life, and I think at the time it didn't feel like I was derailed, but now that I reflect back, or even a few years ago when I was reflecting back on that time frame, I was very much not in myself, one could say, and what some of those things were like, I wasn't, I had kind of still trying to discover who I was as a human being and what I wanted to do in my life. Parent passing away, it certainly was quite something to manage. And then I think just going to dance school on itself and dancing, and that's an obstacle on itself because you're pretty much self-sufficient for the first time in my life. I was 16, just almost 17, and you're thrown into you're on your own. Ta-da! And yeah, I think just becoming an adult was something in some way. It felt like an obstacle, just one hurdle after the next, whether it being, how do I pay my way through the school, things that come up. Am I relating to that dancer, not this one? And also the thing of, am I good enough? The worth comes at, am I good enough to be here in this place, which is remarkable, but am I up for it? Can I do it? Am I endurance? Where is my endurance today? Do I have any? Those self-discovery moments.
Yeah. That incubation period, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but sometimes those incubations take years, decades, frankly, especially when you introduce yoga into a movement and realize that, like Maori culture dates back, to the beginning of time, so to speak. How have these traditions been carried forward for movement? And then what's left with each individual's practices adjusting that tradition naturally in a way. And I've noticed this in my own yoga practice, that what I was taught by my teachers is so different than what I'm teaching right now. Is it still in the tradition? Yes, because the tradition lineage of yogas that I descended from have had passion and innovation as two of the qualities that you can track through 4 generations of teachers. And when I listen to you talk, and especially the yoga piece, I wouldn't expect that there was a lot of precedent at your age, at those young ages. You were pretty much by yourself, right? Your friends, you were different, right? Different than your friends, your friend group, your social. So was that lonely for you? Like, what was that like? Like, you kind of this original thinking, integration of dance and yoga or spirituality. There wasn't a lot of company, I would imagine, in those days.
No, there wasn't. I mean, the company that I had, yes, I'll always have my family and they'll always be there. But I guess in terms of discovering my pathway and who I am, the daydreaming was the home ground for me. To daydream, it gave me so much joy. I'm just going to remove something. My phone's in the sun. My daydreaming helped me to imagine and scenarios I used to as a child. Like I would out of the ceremony of death, a funeral, or we call a tangi on a marae. The body is inside, family enter through ceremony and song and dance, celebrate a person's life. And then I found myself, I record back having a beach lilo that you put on the water and you float on. I blew it up and imagined that was someone's coffin, and I had a small doll or I can't remember what the doll was, and I put it down and I wrapped it up and I was singing to it and I was doing prayers over it. So in a way, I was sort of orchestrating this imagery of movement and celebration and song. I didn't know what I was saying. I was just, these words of my own personal incantation was being addressed to this tupapaku, or this body. So, and it's not that I wanted to become an actor. It's not that but I always had these very clear images of creation, some kind of creation story. And lo and behold, that's my life. I choreograph big dance pieces and have been working in dance it's my 43rd year in terms of still moving the body in dance and creating dance in some way. And talking most recently about my dance that I just finished last week, on the last performance was on the 21st of June at the Auckland Art Gallery, and I have created an opportunity for myself to choreograph dance works each year for 9 years that talk to the stars of Matariki. Matariki is the celebration of the 9 stars, which significantly now we have a holiday called Matariki Holiday. And I presented a proposal to the Auckland Art Gallery. Why don't you allow me to bring artists together, a musician, myself as the dancer and a singer, and each year for 9 years we create a 45-minute performance that audiences could come to and see live dance, music and sound in the building. And I sent it in by email to the Auckland Art Gallery. Literally 5 hours later, they rang back and said, "We'll take it. And I was like, and so I hadn't even created the first dance, so that initiated. So last Saturday was my 4th year working with the Auckland Art Gallery, and that work was called Hikoi. Hikoi means to gather, to march. And the star that I spoke to was Tupuarangi. Tupuarangi, the star in the sky, is the inspiration of that star is to guide and look after everything grown in trees or food, grown off the ground. So not under the ground like potatoes or kumara or sweet potato, but things that live above the land. So birds, life, anything that moves that can be eaten, fruit, the trees, and hikoi to me, because I went to the march in Wellington, thousands, like 40-something thousand people came. Was it more? I think it was more, actually.
Is this at the Parliament building? That
That's
march?
right. Yeah. And I remember being in the crowd, and I was overcome, and I was overwhelmed with just the presence that everyone had for their own reason, standing for what they personally believe in, but there was an ultimate gathering of unity and solidarity. So my sensation and feeling there, I transferred onto stage in and around this particular star about looking after the reverence of our land and our waters and our food and our sovereignty, to take ownership of how we control the environment without it being ripped from under, feet of the people that live here.
Watched one of your dance videos. Is this the one? It's called Estrella.
Yes, that's right. Estrella was one that I did last year.
That was really beautiful with the guitar and the dancing and the singing. And
Yes,
why, because it's Spanish, Estrella. Why did you choose to
Estrella.
name it?
That's right. Estrella, there was a Spanish ship that came here, and I haven't got everything on hands right now to sort of reference from. And it landed in the East Coast, and there was this Voyager. When it came to dock, the soldiers allowed, a few of the military or the Spanish military to get off. And so this particular person got off, and he walked off by himself. And when he got around a bay, he saw 3 naked women gathering seafood. And he was beside himself. He was like, where am I? I'm in paradise. And so he approached the village, and they obviously were wondering who he is and where he is, but he had the most spectacular time that one day, going to the market and being around the Māori culture, watching them they just had their garments on, their lower garments, and everything else was naked, and he was just overcome by this beauty that surrounded him, the food, the colour. And it came time, and then there was a siren or something on the boat that signalled for everyone to come back, but he never left. And he saw the guards coming to collect everyone, and he saw a woman in a big black dress, and he ran up to her and he said, I need to get under that dress. I need to hide. So she covered him over as the guards went past, and he stayed. In the East Coast, there was a whole township, and we call those people the Paniora, half Spanish, half Māori. And they're quite fair. They're very fair and long faces and narrow features. Māori, we have much broader features. Our cheekbones and our noses and our foreheads and our eyebrows are very strong. But Paniora people, half Spanish Māori, are very different.
Wow, the Spanish went everywhere. The Spanish went everywhere.
Yes, they went everywhere. Yeah, they did. And so that was one of the works that I did last year. So there are 9 stars, so I've got another 5 to go. Creation's a beautiful thing.
I don't know how much time we have left, Crystal, but I would love to connect a little more in the, what would you call it, this interconnectedness that you also use for teaching yoga. Like how maybe has dance influenced your teaching and practice of yoga, and even vice versa? Has the understanding of what you're learning through practice and teaching of yoga influenced your dance? And again, the thing that I'm curious about with you, because you have this living duality between yoga and dance. I have a similar duality in yoga and architecture. I'm an architect, and I see so many crossovers in those two professions for me. Just the languaging of space and light and power and environment. What is it like for you as a yoga teacher? Did you find dance is a creative input into the way you teach yoga?
Yes, to both the polarities, but also the similarities in them both is that they all come from one purpose of the breath. It's from that significant place that personally for myself, I'm able to connect with both. Whether if you're in a jump and you have to suspend and hold your breath for a moment as you're in the air to land when the breath comes out. Very similar to the landing and the holding of a posture, potentially just for that moment. And what the yoga has done so that in terms of the dance to yoga, what the dance has enabled me to do from having the practice of yoga is have those interconnected spaces of time, stillness, and essence, the essence of the quality that is sustained within the dance. And in the dance element is that my ability to be able to consciously see what's in front of me and potentially offer a cue that may support the person, not to the alignment, but to perhaps be able to align that specific idea to the person so they can transform themselves. So both language, I think the yoga helped me to clarify language that I could take and transform into dance. The dance initiated my doorway into movement in yoga that allowed me to see the spaces between stillness and movement and in alignment with the breath. So I think those beautiful anchors, which they both are, the movement of dance and the movement of yoga, they come from the one source, which is the breath, but they also come from the source of the spirit, the inhabitor that allows it to come through them, or the facilitator, or the leader, or the choreographer, or the ballerina, or the master of the class, or the postures, or the student, because for me, I'm a student of all of those things. I may be putting together a dance one day, and I have nothing. I have a blank canvas that I can't even, there is nothing there. There's literally but my eye to see someone move could be the instigator or the initiation to a whole new breath of dance. So I feel that having both languages and ideas support one another. And then the Māori culture comes through my voice in the song and how it's delivered through the wisdom of divine essence of Mother Earth through to the sky, Te Rangi Nui, Sky Father, and beyond into Te Ao, the universe, and on and on and on. And the yoga has helped me to really identify this spiritual journey from past, present, future, but also to the now, the present time, and its value to the present time, and how the past has happened, respect it and it's moved, but stay very close to what's happening now in the time frame, which is here. We're all here together having a conversation, and it's the most valuable offering that I could assist with right now.
I have one last thing to say, and I really appreciate the way you've emphasized daydreaming, because as I've learned, I broke my back 20 years ago, and I had this journey through that healing. And I realized that daydreaming, visualization, how powerful our minds are to manifest certain qualities of being. And certain quality of being facilitated healing better than others. And I started to identify again with breath and this idea of visualization, how I could connect to places in my body that I lacked connection with through imagination. And it's in the old books, they talk about this quality. I can't remember the Sanskrit name for it, but where this combination of mind, breath, and movement creates sensitivity to these inner spaces, these inner realms, where the movement is it's a galaxy within, seeing these forces move around inside. I learned all this through trial and error, going through this healing of my broken back. And the little bits of movement that began, I could visualize, couldn't feel, but kept visualizing, kept breathing, starting to trust gravity to move my spine more, without pain, until these visualizations became second nature in terms of viscerally, physiologically having an experience. And once that process, it sounds a lot like what you're describing in terms of choreographing, creating dance movement. This was a process that I just stumbled into through this process of healing that I use to teach from. I teach people. I don't cue physical movement that much anymore because every body is different. Every aspect of movement is inseparable from our mind and our heart, and each mind and heart is unique. So how can I create this understanding to allow the student to do their own creating on a yoga mat? And it's a work in progress. I like the way you said about that. It's this process that is evolving even now, even with this podcast. I'm learning so much just listening to you talk about your craft, both yoga and dance. So I appreciate that.
That I wish to touch on and say goodbye to, or bring some attention to, I was able to draw into the craft of the dance in some very poignant and powerful way. Creation is so valuable and important.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that through my friend and him talking about his mum, I was reminded about my mum. So, yeah, there were times when it got really hard. But it is that I think we stay with what we believe in and just do what we do.
Yeah. Beautiful.
That's a great place to end.
Yeah. Such a pleasure having this time with you.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you
was really
both.
nice to meet you and to learn more about you.
And awesome to actually talk about it all, actually.
It is. It is really magical. Thank you again.
Thank you,
You're
Taane.
welcome. I might just close this session because I have to go to another meeting, but in a small karakia, and there's
Please.
just everything. So it's sort of kept in this realm and it doesn't leak anywhere that it doesn't need to go to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
Thank you, Taane.
That's it for this episode. Be well and stay open to the teacher within. If you've enjoyed our time together, follow or subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming chats you don't want to miss.